So let's talk about the one last concept of this advanced LangChain series, which is called as the runnable pass-through. So when do we use runnable pass-through and what it is actually? So let's try to understand that. First of all, the runnable pass-through are actually used to pass the values of one step, the values which are there at one step, into a chain to the next step. Next step meaning not the immediate next step, but maybe let's say at step number 3 we want to utilize the values which are there at step number 1. In that case, what we do is we actually use this concept of runnable pass through, where a value which is being passed to a particular step does not get modified, rather it will be passed to the subsequent steps without any modification. I think let's go to the example which will make it further clear. So in this example, let me run the libraries. So what I am doing is I am using langchain, rock, community, OpenAI. I think I'm not using OpenAI, so I can remove the langchain, OpenAI, and then uh, the LangChain Hugging Face. So I was trying actually with the OpenAI, but somehow its embedding model was not working for me. So I just thought of using embedding model from Hugging Face, and then I'm using FAS, which is a vector database. So this particular piece of code actually uses some advanced concept which we have not covered in the past. So don't worry if you don't understand a couple of lines. So what I am doing is I will install all these libraries first, and then I will be setting all my environment variables, and then I will remove this import from OpenAI. I will import, and then this Hugging Face. I think this is already run, otherwise it will take some time. And so this is my vector store. Okay, vector store we will study in few chapters from now. What is a vector store? Is vector store basically whenever we have our own documents and files, we uh, create chunk out of those documents and we store them as vectors in our vector store. And on top of that, when the user prompt is being passed, it is basically compared semantically with those chunks, and then the most relevant chunks are returned. Okay, so this we will see in very detail in some video. So okay, so I have created one Faz vector store. Faz is Facebook AI similarity search, and the only chunk or the piece of text which I am using here is Vinod Kambli is older, or maybe you can say the oldest friend of Sachin. I will create embeddings. I'm also passing the embeddings. Embedding is here, the Hugging Face embedding. I'm using sentence transformers. So this is my embedding model, which will create embedding of this text, and it will store in the vector store. So let me run this one. And then there is something called as the retriever, which basically helps you to retrieve the most relevant chunks. So I will get the retriever for this vector store. And now I'm defining a template which says that answer the question based only on the following context. So this will have some context, and this is my question. So there are two variables, context and question. So now if you see, uh, this is question, this is chat prompt template, instantiating chat grok, and finally I'm creating a chain which has context and which has question and which has prompt model and a string output parser. So the point here is when I invoke this chain, I am just passing one string as an input, and if you see my prompt has two variables. My prompt is having two variables, one is the context and other is the question, and I am just passing one piece of string. So my runnable, basically my what you call it, runnable object here is expected to pass two values to my prompt, isn't it? So let me write it in a different fashion, which will make more sense for you, the way we did in the last session. Okay, so the first step, I have this dictionary where there is a context, which is the value for which will be retrieved from retriever. And second, the value of question is actually runnable pass through. So as I said, when I pass this string is essentially passed into both of these runnables. Okay, both of these runnables, this value will be passed, and the retriever basically needs this string so that it can do similarity search on its database. And what it will do is it will pull certain chunks and it will set that as a context. Okay, and my context is required for my prompt. And but at the same time, I also need to pass my original question in the question variable. So in order to accomplish that, what I need to do is I need to simply write runnable pass through, where this value will be passed to runnable pass through as well, but there will be no modification. It will rather be just assigned to my question, and then the question and the context will be passed to my prompt. Is it making sense? So we generally use runnable pass through when we don't need to do any operation, we don't want to modify our value. Rather, from one step, we need to pass a value into the subsequent steps. Okay, so this is actually as good as writing this. I'm sending this string to my retriever, and this retriever will use this string to pull the context, and that context will be set to this context variable. Similarly, this runnable pass through will help me to pass my question as is to the question variable, so that both these values are passed into the prompt. If I don't write this particular question, then it will throw an exception because my prompt is looking for two different values. I hope this is making sense now. So when I run this particular chain, and if I invoke my chain, what I will see, who is the older or oldest friend of Sachin. It says based on provided context, we know the Kamli is the oldest friend of Sachin. Okay, so this is one way of looking how we can use runnable pass through to pass my values from one step to the other steps without making any modification. There is another use of runnable pass through which I would like to highlight, that is to assign the values. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So let's get into the coding. So in this use case, what we are having this template. First, understand what we are trying to achieve. We are having this template which says what should I wear if the weather in CT is temperature in Celsius or in Fahrenheit. Okay, so we have three variables: CT, temperature in Celsius, and temperature in Fahrenheit. Okay, and now we can build our chain in such a way that first of all we will make use of lambda expression. So we have this function which when passed a CT will give us the temperature in Celsius. We just have one function. So here in this chain, when I invoke this method, so let's first see what we are passing while invoking the chain. So we are while invoking the chain, we are passing only one value, which is Paris. So this Paris is actually passed to my first runnable object, which is a lambda expression. And when this is Paris is passed, this method is invoked, and in this particular dictionary, the temperature underscore Celsius will be assigned the value of, it will go Paris, and the Paris has a temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. So this temperature Celsius is equal to 20. Now, since my prompt is looking for three values, I need to pass the city name as well. So as we discussed few minutes back, in this case, I will be using runnable pass through where my value will be passed as is. Okay, so my city will be set as Paris. So now I have got two of my keys. Okay, I need three different variables. Two of them are set in my dictionary. But what about the third one? The third one can be calculated with the help of runnable pass through assign method. So there is a method. So one usage of runnable pass through is that if you want to pass a value without any modification and assign it to a key, then we can use runnable pass through. Second is that in this dictionary which is being returned from my first step into my second step, which is having runnable pass through, if I want to assign or add one more key, then I can use runnable pass through dot assign. And here what I will do is I will again use the lambda expression. Input is my left hand side, right hand side is input, and what I am doing is I am passing this temperature. Okay, now this is having 20 as the value, so this 20 will be passed to my this function, which is, I mean, it's not a function, we are just calculating this expression. So temperature in Celsius multiplied by 9 by 5 plus 32, this will return the temperature in Fahrenheit. And I'm using this lambda expression to put this value into temperature underscore F. Now, essentially, after doing this second step in my chain, I have a, what do I have? I have a dictionary having three different values: temperature in Celsius, the name of the city, and the temperature in Fahrenheit. Okay, so here we made use of runnable pass through dot assign method, which helped us to add one more key into my dictionary. And now these three values can be passed to the prompt, and then the chain can be executed. Let me execute this chain, and you would see if the weather in Paris, okay, this is the city, is 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degree Fahrenheit. This is being calculated from this lambda expression, okay, and it is a mild and comfortable temperature. And all right, so I think we have covered the most important concepts of runnable pass through, which is actually really very difficult to understand, but I think with the help of these small examples, now it should be easy for you guys to understand this concept, and gradually we will apply this concept into our more use cases. Then, you know, this concept will be solidified for you guys. Thank you so much.